Uh, Take two of the Audeze LCD-2 Classics review. Funny thing, when I first tried recording this, did you know that uh, Samsung Galaxy phones, at least through the camera app, have a 10-minute limit for Full HD at 60 FPS? I didn't know. I found out the hard way. Hey, whatever. Maybe you would have gotten motion sickness with 60 FPS, so it's fine. Anyway, so it comes in this box here, right? And trust me, Subway is not affiliated to Audeze in any way. Probably. Let's get to a quick quote unquote unboxing because, I mean, it's already been unboxed. This is the cable it comes with. Now, for a stock cable, this is a really nice cable, I think. I mean, look at this. It's braided, even though it's like plastic, but it's still a very high quality plastic. You shouldn't worry about it. This is a dual 3-pin XLR that go into the headphones. A single-ended 1/4 inch to go into the amp, of course. And the length of the cable is pretty good. I think it's pretty good. You should have no issues with it. I'm able to use it at my desk perfectly fine, and I'm able to roll back my chair about 1 or 2 meters so that I can see the TV up top, and be perfectly fine. Not feel like I have to hold my head a certain way because if I move it too much, it's gonna pull the cable. No, you're fine. This is an awesome cable. I do got to give props to Audeze for that. This is great, man. Okay. Now these are the cables, the headphones. Yep, premium listening experience with your cables connected to your ears. The Audeze LCD-2 Classics planar magnetic headphones. Here they are in all their glory. Look at these. They come wrapped in plastic, by the way, within the box. But, I didn't feel like putting them back in the plastic, so just trust me on that one. And inside, they come with this little cylinder here. This little thing to protect the headphones. Thanks. Ah, these are nice. They're really nice. Now, first time you see them, you might think that they're completely made out of metal. Well, you'd be wrong. Most LCD headphones are made out of mostly metal, but these have a little more of a very high quality plastic rather than metal. See, the headband here is metal. The yokes are metal. This thing is plastic, but it's a good plastic. The rings are, these outer rings right here are metal. This is another plastic, but it's a very, very high quality plastic. These cups right here, these pads, I can't tell if they're, like a synthetic leather or a, genuine leather, but honestly, I don't care. They feel amazing, and we'll get to that in comfort. So, build quality. This headband right here, this is an updated headband from what Audeze usually features. It's very, very, very nice and very, very comfortable compared to the previous Audezes. I tried my friend's LCD X's at some point, and though they're great headphones, they sound amazing, but the comfort was something to greatly consider because if I'm not mistaken, he had the original headband, which was just terrible for a headphone like these. Now, as far as the comfort goes, these are very, very comfortable. You put them on their head, the headband distributes the weight evenly. You're going to have no issues with these whatsoever, except for the weight. Now, planar magnetic headphones have always been heavy, and they always will be heavy. No, they won't. They'll bring down the technology at some point. They'll bring down the weight, but for now, they are quite heavy. So for me, initial impression, what it felt like to me when I put them on was they were like a pair of clackers just like hanging on the sides of your head. Those like balls hanging from the string, right? So the distribution of weight is even, but because there was not a whole lot of clamp on these, it just kind of felt like they just dangled next to your ear. That's what I felt anyway. After listening to them for quite a while, I now realize that this effect is greatly diminished because I've gotten used to it mostly. I've mostly gotten used to it. But it's still, you can still kind of feel it. For example, when you try to bend over, when you try to look down or something, yeah, these things slide off. Not necessarily to the point where they're falling and you're like, oh, I gotta catch them. No. But they do slide out of place. So you might, you're gonna have to reposition them once you look up and, you're back to normal. So, I mean, that's definitely a downside, but I think that's something you can get used to, especially if you're not always looking down with these or if you're not literally headbanging to your music, because that's something you cannot do with these either. The pads, they're very nice. They're very, very plush and very, very comfortable. But they do kind of start to mold in quite quickly, I think. Like, here, take a look. I don't know if you can see here through the detail. On this left pad, you can already tell it's not perfectly straight. Like, it's not a perfect, like, cone. It's already kind of seeing a bit of an indentation, a bit of a fold, right? And I've only had these for 4 to 5 days, more or less. So, I mean, I doubt the pads will wear out very, very quickly, but just do consider that, they do mold in a little faster than I would expect a pair of like, high-end memory foam-ish pads to do. Because these are kind of memory foam. They're not exactly that material, but they're very, very plush to the point where you could practically consider these like memory foam-ish. Now for the specs. These are 70 ohms, which means they're not the easiest headphone to drive, but they're not the hardest either. So I'll give you an example. On my computer, 100% volume through the settings. On my music player, 85% volume through its setting. I'm getting around 9 to 10 a.m. on the Aune X7S through single-ended, which is definitely not bad. Obviously, there's, oodles of power left on the X7S before it starts to notice any, distortion or it struggles to power a certain headphone. So you'll be perfectly fine. So just to give you a reference, my HD600s, my Sennheisers, I get them to like 11 to noon. Noon would be pushing it. Noon would be like on the quietest songs when I want to headbang. Like it's quite pushing it. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Now the sound. These are super warm and super dark. Like, I exaggerated there. They're quite warm and quite dark, but not super. You're not going to be hearing these and say, being washed away by the warmth of these and I can't hear Treble. No. That's not these at all. They just have a bit of a tilt to them. Maybe I should have said that to begin with. Nice. Soundstage. They have a massive soundstage. Like, these things, they sound huge. And I like them. I like that about them because they also have very good separation to the point where you can distinguish certain instruments that are on certain parts of, like, they're located in certain parts of the track. Like, yes, they're both on the left side, but one of them is to the upper end, one of them is kind of to the lower end, like that, and they're not like right next to each other. They're more separated. They have their own space to play and to breathe, and I really, really enjoyed that about these headphones. As far as the bass goes, the bass on these is excellent. It is definitely its strongest point. It is typical of a planar driver, which means very, very flat response, but very, very present and very, I wouldn't say very powerful, but I would say commanding, I would say. Yeah. Not to the point where it overpowers everything, but to the point where the bass is there. You want your bass. There is your bass. You won't be disappointed in the quantity of bass. It is quite bassy. Vocals, the mids, the vocals. Because of that good separation, I feel like vocals are a tad forward, just a tad, not as much as like a Sennheiser or a headphone that is, meant for, say, monitoring or whatever, but they are forward enough to provide that clear distinction between these are the instruments back here, and then these are your vocals right here. Not quite as much as a Sennheiser, but they do have that effect. More so with female vocals than male vocals, which, I mean, I'm fine with. I cannot complain with that. I feel like with Sennheisers, it is that same effect, but the male vocals are a little more forward, more comparable to the presence of female vocals. Whereas with this one, the difference in female vocals and male vocals is a little more apparent. Still both very somewhat forward, but more so with the female vocals. So, the treble. Like I mentioned, these are a dark pair of headphones, which means that the treble is a little recessed and kind of rolled off at the top. No, I'd say quite rolled off at the top. Yeah, like the area above 10K is just, I mean, to my ears, it's just completely gone, or mostly gone. That's something I definitely do not like. Because, well, I'm used to Sennheiser HD600s. Everything is equal representation for the most part. And there is no one thing that is more present than anything else other than vocals, which is, I'd say, normal. I think that's a normal thing to have in front of other things. So I don't complain about that. But despite the fact that the air in the treble is mostly gone, the part of the treble that is there, everything else sounds really good. It sounds very, very crisp, very detailed, silvery, which I think is also a typical of a planar driver, that has like silvery treble, and I really like that sound. It sounds really nice. For example, cymbals, they don't just sound like a regular cymbal. It just have this silvery twist to it. It's like this enjoyable, high quality sound to it that I really like. The best way I can describe listening to these is like listening to massive speakers in a small to medium sized room. That's the best way I could say it. So they sound massive, but because of that recession in the treble, it sounds like you're placing a cap, like you're placing a roof, or like you're boxing in that massive sound a little bit, just a little bit. So it's not quite like being out in an open field. It's almost there, but yeah, a little diminished because of that treble recession. So I'm going to give an example here. Let's say a rock or a metal track. The high end, like the cymbals, the hi-hats, I'm not exactly certain which instruments, but that high end, right? Some of those sound very silvery, very, very crystallized, and I like it. And then some of those are the area that's above 10K that is just kind of missing or very limited, or just, they don't ring out until they fade. They kind of just, they have a limit. They stop sooner. And that is what kind of creates that boxed in effect for, like, say, rock and metal music. And that's a bit of a downside to me, I believe. So in a rock or a metal soundtrack, rather than having equal representation, your like low guitars, your bass guitars, and your kick drums, and the lower end of the drums are what you hear more often, like a little more powerful and a little more present, a little more stronger, which I do like that, particularly like drums and yeah, like powerful drums. But I do not like that the higher end, the cymbals, you know, the higher end of the music spectrum, the audio spectrum is just kind of missing, or not missing, but recessed. So I could adjust mostly to that, but here is my issue. Here's my issue with them. And let's get to the conclusion because we're already going long enough. I love these headphones. They're great. They're great. But I don't want them because I got used to my Sennheisers, and my Sennheisers are just equal representation. They got that air, they have everything, and they sound so good. And these also sound very good, but it's missing like 5% to 7% of that upper end. Like overall, the total spectrum is just missing that last little piece. So what is here is super detailed, super enjoyable, and super awesome. But what isn't there is what kills me. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't have all the money in the world. So a headphone like this I think would be endgame for me. I think it would be endgame for me. And to not have that equal representation, to consider this to become your daily driver, I cannot. It's just, I cannot without that last bit. You know, or on the other hand, to think that my HD600s are going to be my daily driver and I'm going to enjoy those most of the time, the $300 headphone, and then pop into this one every now and then, the $600 to $800 headphone, that doesn't make sense to me either. So I think there are, I'd say, two types of people that should really, really get this headphone, that they'd be perfect for. The first person is the person who's used dark headphones and is using dark headphones, like say the HD650s or like HD650s, for example. You're not exactly familiar with that air that I think is quite, it really changes the audio experience for you. I think that air is just, it's really nice, especially in more acoustic tracks. You know, that more analytical sound signature that I got with the 600s, it changes you. But if you have not listened to that and you have not been spoiled by that, these are excellent for you. These are like a step up from the 650s. And if you want to really convince yourself, this HD650 user, that these are your end game, good. You buy them, whether they're 600 or 800, preferably 600, of course, and you don't look back. You do not look back. These are yours. On the other hand, if you were, say, a high roller that, you know, currently has an HD800S or maybe some ZMF Dynamics or something more high end, and you're like, yeah, these are my daily drivers and they're my end game and I love them, but now I want, you know, a side headphone, a little thing on the side for some fun, for some bass, you know, some. Not too serious. These are the thing I'll pick up every now and then. They're not worth as much as my daily driver, but I'll use them too. That makes more sense to me. See, I can't do that because my daily driver is worth like half of this on sale. So, yeah, that's why I cannot justify keeping these. Plus, by not keeping them, I am able to invest in other things that I can use for the channel. So, double win, I think. But my God, if I had already like an endgame dynamic that was above the $1,000 mark, and then I would get these as a side headphone, they would be perfect. I would love that. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. That is my review of the LCD-2 Classics. Great headphone for a specific type of crowd, not quite for everybody. I might even say that if you have never listened to high-end audio, these will definitely bring you in. These are definitely like that, oh, this is high-end audio. Because they're not used to the air and the neutrality and the clinical nature of what is to be considered, I think, a daily driver for everybody. But they do have that fun sound that they might be used to from, say, lower-end headphones that they might have heard, except professional and actually detailed and actually really, really good sounding. So, yeah, that will do.